I want to respond to a really important question someone asked me recently. Well, what about the flood in Sodom and Gomorrah? Doesn't that show the God of the Bible or the Old Testament is violent? Well, that's a great question, and I want to respond to that. You see, many people quietly carry this fear that God was harsh back then and only become loving in the New Testament. But you see, that's not the picture the Bible actually gives. Let us walk through this together. When we read the Old Testament through God's healing character, not through a punitive legal lens, something remarkable emerges. So God is consistently doing one thing: protecting and preserving the human race from complete destruction so that he can bring the Messiah, the healer, into the world. From Genesis to Malachi, God's major objective is simple: to keep the holy lineage open. That is, the line through which Jesus would come to save humanity. Now, if that's God's purpose, then imagine what Satan's purpose would be. His strategy would be exactly the opposite. In fact, the world with so much violence, so much corruption and moral collapse, that no one would want to be part of God's lineage or even be capable of it. Now, if the lineage closes, what happens? The Messiah never comes. If the Messiah never comes, humanity then is lost. So the battle in the Old Testament is not about God looking for chances to punish and unleashing his anger. It is about Satan trying to suffocate the only lifeline that could rescue humanity. So with that in mind, let us revisit the flood. Genesis says humanity was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. Every imagination of the heart was corrupted. In other words, if God didn't act, evil would consume the world completely. So the flood wasn't an act of rage, it was a surgical intervention by a loving God. Just like a surgeon must cut out severe infection so the patient can live. God stepped in to preserve the only remaining family willing to stay connected to him. God wasn't destroying life, he was saving it, preserving it. And what about Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, the cities weren't simply sinful. They were violently predatory. When an entire population surrounds a house to assault male strangers, Genesis 19:4-9, that tells you that the culture had passed the point where healing was even possible. If that culture were allowed to spread unchecked, it would have swallowed the entire region through which the Messiah's line would pass. Again, God had to intervene, not to punish, but to protect and preserve. So I pray that you can see this consistent pattern here. God only acts decisively when evil becomes so destructive that it threatens the salvation of the world. And even then, he gives every opportunity to escape. Noah preached for decades, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. Angels pleaded with Lot's family, Genesis 19:12-14. God's heart, as you can see, was mercy all the way through. So, if you look at God, he's not violent. He is a physician doing everything possible to keep humanity alive long enough for the cure, Jesus Christ, to arrive. He says in Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 32, I take no pleasure in the death of anyone. Turn and live. So my friends, when you see God's actions in the context of a cosmic battle over Messiah's arrival, his character becomes beautifully consistent. A God who heals, a God who loves, a God who protects, and a God who preserves even when the world is falling apart. Amen to that.